I just don't think we've ever been able to generate that kind of pressure.
Well, then we'll lose. But don't blame the president for our people not doing what they should do. The right wing can do it. The NRA can do it. Why the hell can't we do it? People are too busy. One of the things we can do is have fewer demonstrations in which we reinforce each other's feelings about how wonderful we are, and more of the hard, boring work of lobbying legislators.
That was Congressman Barney Frank on this program just about a week and a half ago, talking about the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, also Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, and what members of Congress and the president are doing to make sure that it gets both of those efforts get voted on. And he focused a lot on how the community, particularly on ENDA, is not lobbying and doing the work. Dr. Jillian Weiss, a blogger and scholar who has been on this program several times, wrote a post challenging Barney Frank's assertion on Bellerico.com, the Bellerico Report, where she is a contributor, and really said that lobbying is being done and that Barney Frank needs to stop blaming the community. Dr. Jillian Weiss is Associate Professor of Law and Society at Ramapo College in New Jersey, and joins me to talk about her post. Hi, Jillian. Welcome back to the program.
Good afternoon, Mike.
So when you heard Barney Frank saying that we're just not doing the lobbying, doing the work to get ENDA passed, and even Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and it was in response to my really talking about what the president is doing in terms of pressuring and what the leadership in Congress is doing, it just didn't sit well with you because you have a lot of details on what exactly has been done.
That's correct, and particularly since it was mentioned after you said, well, what's happening with the president and with Congress, and then he went into a diatribe. Clearly, this is looking for political cover because they have not done an effective campaign. I mean, HRC, the Task Force, National Center for Lesbian Rights, United ENDA, National Center for Transgender Equality, they've been issuing action alerts, phone banks, lobby days. On Bellerico.com, as you know, I've done 150 posts in the last year, asking with the legislator of the day, having people call and write letters. And, as a matter of fact, Representative Frank even said in the Washington Blade that the community is lobbying hard. That was back in June, and was nothing along the last 2 months saying, where are you? You're not doing anything. But now when you ask, well, why didn't the president mention ENDA in his State of the Union address? Why is he saying, this year on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but then there's a study and it's going to take several years, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're not lobbying enough. Why are you asking for the president to do it?
Right. Here was the actual response to the question about the president. He said, everybody wants Big Daddy to do it.
Do you think the president has a magic one? I mean, this is just crazy.
No, but I'm saying
the president. I know what you're saying. Mr. President, do it all for us. We're too busy and too lazy to make any phone calls.
What people want to know now is that we're going to get a vote, and they want to know the president really is going to push for a vote.
You know what? That is exactly why we're going to lose, that kind of mentality. Oh, Big Daddy, do it for me. If people want to vote, why don't they call their representatives? I've got people complaining to me. Have they called their representatives and their senators? Mm-hmm. Probably not.
But in fact, many people have called their representatives and their senators, as you point out. And he also on this program had said, I think it was last year, certainly sometime, that people were lobbying, particularly transgender activists, because, of course, last time around with ENDA, the big controversy over not including transgender people. So he actually made the case that, oh, no, everybody's on board now, and transgender activists have been doing the work, and we're really educating people. I mean, you're right about that. And you actually have some figures and some data in terms of your experience with the groups to show that people have been lobbying.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look, for example, at when bills are introduced and how many co-sponsors are on board at the time the bill is introduced, and then look to see later on how many new co-sponsors come on, which is probably, the result, at least in part, of lobbying, what you see is in 2007 and in 2009 with regard to ENDA, we did a tremendous amount of work. I mean, we started with 67 co-sponsors in 2007. We wound up with 184. That's 117 no co-sponsors. In 2009, we went from 117 at the start to 197 now. Back in 2001 or 2003, how many new co-sponsors did we get after the introduction of the bill? 3. In 2001, it was 13. So something has shifted. And if Representative Frank had said this in 2003 or 2001 or before, I would say you're absolutely right. But something's changed, but he hasn't changed, and the question is why?
And I think it's very important to talk about this and really challenge some of what he said, because it does resonate with a lot of people. Some people who were listening, a lot of people who were listening responded here and on Facebook and elsewhere. Well, you know what? Barney's got a bad way of manner of, speaking, and he gets a little bit crazy and gets a little bit hostile. But his basic point is right. We're not lobbying. And as you just say, and they just know from their friends maybe or whatever. And look, every movement and, the general population of the country is ambivalent often and apathetic. But as you point out, compared to a few years ago, the lobbying is being done, and we're actually seeing a shift. And you really believe that if a vote happened, we could really pass, and certainly in the House and even in the Senate. But it's going to take that political muscle from the leaders and from the president to make sure people don't get cold feet.
Absolutely. This is not going to happen from me and my couple of friends calling the receptionist at Senator so-and-so's office. That needs to happen, and that is happening, and it needs to happen more. But if you're not going to give us credit for anything and just say we're all terrible and we never do anything, we're just lazy, sitting in front of the TV, then, what you're doing is something else. You're suppressing the lobbying effort. You're not actually leading anything. And, we're caught in a catch-22. If gay people are too insistent, then they say, well, don't you know there's other issues, economy and health care, we have to do this. And then they ask, well, where are you? We're here, we're lobbying. But the president needs to come in, Congress needs to come in, this Harry Reid needs to come in the Senate. We need 5 more votes in the Senate. Now, there's 9 possible yeses, but it's not going to happen because Jill Weiss calls up and says, please, will you vote for me? It's going to happen because in Washington, D.C., the president gets on the phone, he calls people for meetings, he twists arms. They do whatever it is they do in terms of the deals down there, but it's not going to happen because we had a lot of people calling the receptionist.
And we certainly didn't, as you pointed out, hear the president say, we're going to get the Employment Non-Discrimination Act passed this year in the State of the Union. He said he would work to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. That was it. In the budget that they released, they talked about the Civil Rights Division, the Justice Department prosecuting hate crimes, putting some money toward, obviously, the hate crimes bill they actually passed. I'm glad they're going to do that. But, that we would expect. They talked about AIDS funding, but they said nothing about the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, and certainly said nothing about Don't Ask, Don't Tell as well. And that's where you look for the leadership in those instances. When the president speaks, with the budget he releases, those are the places.
Look, we all have to work together, and Representative Frank is right that it can't be done in Washington alone. The country has to lobby, but you know what? We're a relatively small group. We're not like the NRA. We're not like AARP. We're going out and lobbying. There are lobby days that are coming up in March, and I ask, everybody to consider going to those, especially from those states where we need those additional votes in the Senate. But, for Barney Frank to get on the line and say, that we're going to lose because you people aren't lobbying, that's counterproductive. And he needs to start leading.
What do you think is going to happen with ENDA, just looking at that situation? You've got the president certainly not speaking out on it. You've got Barney Frank doing this kind of defense of the pressure on the president. Joe Salmonese of the Human Rights Campaign did say on this program on the same day Barney Frank was here that ENDA is not dead and that his group is still putting pressure on, but it seems muted. I mean, I certainly have not heard some really vocal calls from any of the gay groups on ENDA.
No, this is not the A game. This is, you're shooting for a C to get by. Yes, the end is not dead. Yeah, we'll probably pass it in the House. We've got 223 votes. There's still 29 that are uncontested.